Dear friends and Gouldians, welcome to the 4th edition of Happy Birthday, Mr. Gould. This is a very special edition. It's a COVID edition. Every year we celebrate the legacy of Glenn Gould here from the beautiful Fazioli showroom in Milan. And we have a lot of special guests and interview, but I don't want to reveal too much. I have the first connection with Alida. I dare to say she is in Italian Aurelia. Alida, can you hear me? Yes, Alida, loud and clear. Greetings to all our audience who are following us today. And yes, I'm in a very Gouldian location in total isolation. Oh yes, I see. You are in your favorite place for interviews. Exactly. I'm here with a guest that our audience know very well. I'm talking about Mr. Brian Levine, the Executive Director of the Glenn Gould Foundation that this year will present the event. Happy birthday, Mr. Gould. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Alida. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you, what about you? I have a lot to ask you because during this period, very hard period we're living in, I want to ask you about the foundation, the mission of the foundation, a lot of things that will happen.
Well, thank you so much. Well, what can we say about these last 6 months? The world is now turned upside down. We are all practicing social distancing. Our office, well, I'm in the office right now, but most of the time we're not. And we have transferred a lot of our energy into the online world since we can't present live concerts just at the moment. But in some ways, it's a great opportunity. And I think it's one that Glenn Gould would have been very, very excited by, because we are using technology. We're using it to communicate with people, just like you. And we're reaching audiences around the world that we haven't been in touch with before, so that when we make a presentation, we'll now be able to present it for everyone, not just people who can come to Toronto and buy a ticket to an event.
Absolutely, Brian, and thank you so much for all your support with the Glenn Gould Foundation for the event. Happy birthday, Mr. Gould. Have you seen the program of this year? It's super exciting.
It's great. And really, congratulations to you, to D Major, for all the amazing work that you've done over these years. I'm really, really delighted that people are tuning in to the 2020 COVID edition of Happy Birthday, Mr. Gould. I think it's very, in a way, interesting because, of course, we know that Glenn didn't like germs. He was afraid of germs. So he would be probably seeking a little spot up in the mountains. Probably he'd be your next door neighbor if he were alive in these times. But he wouldn't come out.
Thank you very much, Brian, for your greetings. This year from Fazioli showroom, and we thanks a lot Paolo Fazioli, the engineer Paolo Fazioli, for giving us the opportunity to play the amazing pianos in the showroom in Milan, and also the pianist Rachel Kudo. She will play an amazing tribute to Glenn because she is a fan of Gould. And also she was the late pupil of the maestro Leon Fleischer, and she is very, very happy to participate, and she is honored to receive the greetings from you. And also the journalist and author Katie Hafner. She wrote the famous novel, The Romance on Three Legs. Would you like to say something to our special guest?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. It's really a thrill at the Glenn Gould Foundation. We've always had a special place in our heart for young artists, the artists who are going to be keeping the great works of music alive for future generations, and who really carry the torch for all of us into the next generation. And Rachel Kudo is an outstanding young pianist. We're really thrilled to see her career move into the international sphere. Of course, she has the best possible background studying with the late but very great and deeply missed Leon Fleischer, one of the truly inspiring figures in music in our time, one of the greatest teachers and mentors, and someone who really in his life represented such courage because of his successful struggle to overcome the repetitive injury in his hand, make a career as a left-handed pianist, and then finally return to playing the regular literature. This is an example of the kind of love of music that inspires future generations, and I'm looking forward to the inspiration that Rachel is going to bring to us in her performance today. Glenn Gould would be thrilled. Thank you so much, and welcome, Rachel. So great to see you at the Fazioli showroom. It's amazing. It must feel like returning to the world again after such a long time away from beautiful instruments, all the lovely people. So it's great that they're hosting you today. I'm really delighted and honored to introduce and to welcome one of our favorite people. She is a terrific writer. She's a really wonderful person, and her great book, Romance on Three Legs, is one that everyone interested in Glenn Gould should read. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, please welcome Katie Hafner.
Thank you again, Brian. And of course, we remember to our audience how to support the Glenn Gould Foundation. Also on the website www.glenngould.ca. It's very important in this hardest time we're living in to support the legacy of Glenn Gould, but not only his legacy, but the legacy of the arts for humanity. And we are very close to you, Brian, in this great mission, as you know. And we'll wish you all the best, and thank you for this great introduction to our artist this year in the COVID edition. And yes, see you soon, and I hope you like and enjoy the program today. And now the line go to Alida from Fazioli Showroom in Milano. Rachel, kudo. congratulations, Rachel, for your wonderful performance, and thank you for being today with us for celebrating Glenn Gould. I'm curious to ask you some questions because our audience wants to know you better. And you have an international career, as I said. You won numerous prestigious awards around the world, and congratulations indeed for your concert activity. How Glenn Gould inspires you?
Well, first of all, Alida, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor and pleasure for me to partake in this beautiful celebration for his birthday. I think that's really wonderful and, honorable for you to continue to do this tribute and to remember his legacy and activities, because he really was inspiring. And as we know, he forever changed the world. He has made such a lasting impact on so many people, even when, you and I, we've never actually met him in person. If you think about that and how powerful his being was, his artistry, his writings, his words, everything all together, I think you asked me, how does he inspire me? It's really amazing. Thanks to you, I've listened to him more carefully, more detailed to his words, learned much more about him and his life, and the more I know, the more I appreciate this really incredible person and a genius, a creative genius for sure. So I think every day we're very lucky that we have such a vast amount of recordings and materials, writings, like your documentary, all these beautiful tributes that continue to keep us going and to remember him, I think.
Thank you, Rachel, for your moving words. And we know also that Glenn retired from the concert at very early age, only at 32. And Glenn, among the other things, never participated to a competition because he said, I hate competitions. What do you think of this very radical idea? And do you think it might be possible today to make such a choice?
Oh, of course. I think, first of all, I think anything is possible. And I think also everything is a choice. Whether or not you play a concert, whether or not you participate in a competition. I mean, you wake up and what do I do today? I mean, every little thing is a choice. So you asked me, do you think it's possible to do without competitions? And of course, this is in the frame of being an artist, a musician, yep. For music competitions. Certainly. I mean, these are things that are simply, I think you should just view as an opportunity, as a good way to challenge yourself. And oftentimes when you're young and a young student, trying to increase your experience and your repertoire and just your activities, it's a wonderful goal to have. I think both for the student and for the teacher, to prepare them how to work with a lot of repertoire, because it's very rare today that you can, for example, have one recital program or one concerto. You study the whole year and then you have one concert. It's much more active today. I mean, the requirements to have a career in music is really a tremendous one. The presenters want 2 recital programs, 2, 3. They want a list of 10 concertos because every orchestra, every conductor, they have different tastes. They cater to their audience, to their subscribers. So it's just that the demands are quite strenuous, yes, for an artist. So I think this is why, for me, when I did participate in competitions, it was a great way to challenge myself.
Student of the late Maestro Leon Fleischer, and who passed away unfortunately this year. And Glenn Gould interviewed him during the documentary The Prospect of Recordings. And for the maestro, the performance can only be captured in the very moment, and he loved concert hall. But Glenn obviously respects his point of view. But do you think do you like? The more play in public, or as our hero, you prefer to perform in a recording studio?
I think that both aspects, the recording and the live concert, for me as an artist, are essential activities. Not necessarily because I feel that you have to record to leave something behind. That's not really what I think. I don't feel like there needs to be a record of me playing, Bach because, I have the best way, and, people, generations must listen to me. That's not why I think, for me, I want to record. I record because it just captures you and your studies and your music and your being with the composer, with the music at that moment in your life.
Do you want to tell us your next project and where we can follow you on social media?
Yes, well, now, as you know, it's a very difficult time for arts.
This is a COVID edition.
Yes,
I have
it's
to say, it's a COVID edition. COVID edition, yes.
Yes.
Very particular moment.
A very particular moment. But in a way, actually, I can relate to Mr. Gould because this time for me has brought me closer to music. I feel much more when I'm sitting at the piano or doing anything, interacting with people, reading books. I feel that there is much more depth and things to learn and to discover than I realized. And I think that's what also Mr. Gould felt. He really felt the magnitude of music and how it's so much greater, than us and than life itself. And that's what draws me. So for me, I feel very privileged to have a piano and to continue to study works. And you asked me what my activities are. I'm making a series of recordings right now to study more music. Also the Goldberg variations, which of course
keep
Glenn
us posted because we want to hear all your new upcoming projects and of course your website.
Yes.
Would you like to remember to our fellows?
Oh, well, it's rachelkudomusic.com. So everything is Rachel Kudo Music because I just love music, just like you.
At the end of the interview, we say together, "Happy birthday, Mr. Gould."
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, absolutely.
3, 2, 1.
Happy birthday, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Rachel, for this wonderful nocturne of Chopin. And as I said at the beginning of your interview, this is a COVID edition. And Rachel, I have a wonderful story of friendship to tell us.
Thank you, Alita. Yes, this 6 months has been a very difficult time for, I think, everybody around the world. One of the beautiful things that has happened to me, at least, is that it's actually brought me closer to many people and people that I might have never had a chance to interact with before in an unprecedented situation. One of these happenings for me was for me getting to know actually and becoming close friends with one of my neighbors. She lived downstairs, as she still does, lives downstairs of my apartment. And actually when I started practicing, she came up to me and wanted to know when I'll be practicing more because, it was a little bit nuisance or, she wanted to be able to focus on her work because she is a science editor, a writer, and a poet. And so in the beginning, the music of, for my playing was more of a distraction, something to avoid. But as the coronavirus situation developed and we became more closer, she actually, we would text each other and she would want to know what I was playing because she really liked the music and anyway it developed us into a much closer relationship, and now we talk on the phone. It's really lovely. And one of the things that, besides the love of music, was the fascination and appreciation of Mr. Gould. And as we developed our friendship, it turned out that she's a beautiful poet, and she had written actually a beautiful poem about Glenn Gould a few years ago, actually, and she shared it with me, and I'm so happy because now I can share it with whoever's viewing this, and I think it's a really beautiful poem. So I hope we all find some inspiration there too in her words.
Thank you, Rachel. Let's watch and listen carefully the beautiful poem.
As a boy, he sang Mahler to cows. His teacher taught him finger tapping. The fingers of one hand rest on the keys, while the other hand taps the fingertips. The depressed keys rebound, lifting the fingers which remember the sense of ease. Glenn Gould's genius released the world and its variations, the patterns missed by those who mistake force for depth. Music responds to technique so deftly aimed, as an animal permits a gentle hand to find a steady pulse.
We have a live streaming from San Francisco with the writer and author Katie Hafner. Thank you for the line, Lida. I'm here with a new guest, the writer, journalist and author of the book A Romance on Three Legs. A warm welcome to Katie Hafner. Hello, Katie.
Hello, Alida. It's so nice to be with you. I recognize the book. I think it was who published it in Italian. Is that right?
Yes, it is, and the translation is Glenn Gould, Alla ricerca del pianoforte perfetto, one of my favorite books, and of course, one of the truly cult and a real gem among Glenn Gould fans and behind. Congratulations, because it's one of my favorite books too. And I have a lot of questions to start because at the beginning of the book you talk about a beautiful trip to a piano gathering in Vermont. And during a dinner, Mr. Kate Pinter, a colleague of the gathering, planted the seed of Glenn Gould in your head. But before the gathering and before your research, what approach did you have to Glenn Gould?
Well, let me tell you briefly what that dinner was like, because it was a real inspiration for me. And first of all, let me tell you, I'm a terrible, terrible pianist. I'm worse than a beginner, so don't ask me any questions about that. But I was going to this piano camp in Vermont, and we all sat around at a big dinner table, and Keith Pinter, my fellow camper, who's an excellent pianist, he said that he had just watched the film 32 Short Films about Glenn Gould. Yes. And he said that there's a wonderful scene in it where Glenn Gould is in the phone booth, and then there's hearing news of his own death, a very bizarre scene. And I couldn't get out of my head. I was thinking, what an eccentric musician Glenn Gould must have been to have inspired a film like that. And so I was between books. I was looking for a new book project, and I thought, I need to write a book about one piano, just one piano. And, a lot of people have said to me, well, then you must have had the piano in mind. And no, I had Glenn Gould in mind, and then I thought, I'll bet you anything that he had a piano that was every bit as eccentric as he was. So sure enough, I heard that he loved not just his Chickering, and we can talk about that too, but that he loved his Steinway, which I then started looking into. This was about, 15 years ago. And I heard that he had a piano tuner who was blind. And I looked in the phone book in Toronto, and this man answered the phone. And I said, hi, were you Glenn Gould's piano tuner? And he said, oh, yes. I'm Verne, and you, yes. And he started telling me these wonderful stories. And I thought, bingo, that's my book. So that is how I got inspired.
Recently, we received the terrible news. Verne Edquist passed away. And on 27th of August, if I'm not getting wrong, and you tell me your first meeting with Verne was at the phone, and how it was. How did you feel? How did you feel?
Oh, he was so warm and so friendly. And he said, now you just, anytime you are in Toronto, because I lived in San Francisco, which is 3,000 miles away from Toronto. He said, if you're ever in Toronto, you just give me a call. And so I had a research assistant who went for the first interview with Verne. And he came back and he said, you know, Verne is so wonderful. You need to go to talk to Verne. So this was in 2004. So how long? So 16 years ago. And he lived in a modest little house on the outskirts of Toronto. He welcomed me in, and we sat for many hours. He and his wife Lillian and I, she was always there, sat, and he told me the whole story of everything that you read in the book, of his childhood, how he, it was his uncle who realized that Verne was nearly blind. And the amazing thing, and this is a really wonderful part of piano history, is that blind tuners used to be very, very common in the United States. I don't know if that's true in Italy. Is that true in Italy as well?
A little bit, yes.
No, yeah, could be. So, the way this happened is that World War II veterans, it all started in the 40s and 50s when World War II veterans would come back, and World War I as well, would come back blind, wounded and blind. And so to give them an occupation, instead of doing something mindless, schools for the blind would teach their blind students how to tune pianos, which is why you often hear in the United States that the older tuners, many of them are blind. In fact, it's fascinating, actually.
The story of Verne is a story of hope, and it's a story about to survive to your own limits and had success. Glenn and Verne worked together for more than 20 years. Do you think they developed a kind of psychological dependence?
Well, you know, Gould was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I think, okay, that's such a good question. Okay, I think that Glenn was very dependent on Verne after a while because he really heard things that Verne would hear as well. If a piano was just starting to go out of tune, he would say, Verne, did you hear that? And Verne would say, yes, I think I did. And so they had this kind of, the French phrase, folie à deux, that they were engaging in together. And they both became sort of kind of completely anal about keeping this piano in tune. And after a while, Glenn, I think, thought he couldn't do anything without Verne, and Verne was very financially dependent on Gould, except he didn't. I mentioned this recently in my obituary that I wrote for the Glenn Gould Foundation. Verne was the nicest guy you will ever meet, but the one hint of bitterness was that he didn't feel fully appreciated by Glenn Gould, which is really too bad because I think Gould really appreciated him, but all Verne wanted was, some words, and Glenn wasn't good about that. He was very much an Asperger-y guy.
Yeah, when I was lucky to interview him in Toronto in 2019, and Verne said that Glenn was a real Scandinavian. He doesn't like to make compliments, but the father of Glenn one day said to Verne, I say you did an amazing job, so he was pretty reserved maybe. One last thing is about your favorite piece about Glenn Gould, and if there will be an opportunity to listen to you play the piano. I did this question.
I don't play the piano. I do not play the piano, so there will be zero opportunity. My husband plays. I was really practicing really hard for a while, and then I just realized I wasn't making any progress.
No.
It's a really, really hard thing to do as an adult. I picked it up as an adult. But my favorite recordings of his, or my favorite things about him.
Both.
Well, everybody loves his Goldberg variations. I like the second recording better than the first.
Yes.
Just because I love it when people do something when they're older. I mean, there's something about being a prodigy that doesn't interest me. Mm-hmm. And I love his Brahms intermezzi. I just think, he was in love with his own recordings of them. Do you have a favorite of his recordings?
I like much Brahms intermezzi, and also I love when he play harpsichord. It's strange to say, but yes, for me too, Brahms intermezzi. And maybe next project, you have some anticipation to say to our audience about your next book or your podcasts.
Oh, the podcast. Well, yes, I'd love to tell you. It's a podcast called Our Mothers Ourselves. And it's interviews with one daughter or son, because men have mothers too, about one amazing mother. And I do it every week. And I just did a series on the 19th Amendment, which is when in the United States, women got the right to vote for the first time in 1920. So that's the podcast. These moms they're great. They're great women. They're great moms. It's a celebration, but it's also very insightful. And I finished a novel, and there's one entire chapter that takes place in Italy, in a little town. In the Piemonte region of Italy, so that was fun to write, and I'm working on a book about the game of golf, because I started playing at an older age to spend more time with my husband, and it's just a very funny, but serious feminist take on the game of golf.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And also, the Glenn Gould mother have an important role in his life, because she started to listen to classical music since he was born, and she helped him so much, I think, because he remembered her mother very often. And
yes.
This is lovely.
Yeah. Right, good point. And she thought she had another Tchaikovsky on her hands.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. Katie, thank you so much for this wonderful interview. We'll follow you on your website. And thank you so much. At the end of the interview, we'll say together, Happy birthday, Mr. Gould.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Mr. Gould.
Thank you again, Katie, and see you soon for a next interview. And
okay, bye-bye. Ciao.
And the line go back to Fazioli, to Alida for the next concert. And now, guys, I would love to pay my little homage to Glenn Gould with Brahms Intermezzi, Opus 118. I'm going to change dress. See you later. I'm in connection with Los Angeles with an extraordinary guest, a legendary pianist and composer who is with us today for celebrating Glenn Gould's birthday. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Mike Garson. Hello, Mike.
Hello, I'm so happy to be with you, and even though we're separated by 5,000 miles or more, it's wonderful to be able to see you and at least communicate in these crazy, crazy times.
But first of all, thank you very much for being with us today, for celebrating the genius of Glenn Gould. Your career is extraordinary, and you have worked with a lot of greatest of music as Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails, Alicia Keys, and above all, we know you very well for your collaboration with Mr. David Bowie. But besides rock, I know you're a very classical music passionate, and you have a respect for Glenn Gould, and how your passion for Glenn Gould born, and when was the first time you listened to him?
Yeah, this is a very special interview for me because Glenn Gould was somebody that I really admired. I had several pianists as I grew up that were my heroes. Vladimir Horowitz, Arthur Rubinstein, Richter, and for Bach, nobody better than Glenn Gould. I also like two of your Italian pianists, Pollini and Michelangelo, is that it? And they were all wonderful. But for Bach, nobody like Glenn Gould, and when I would hear him play, it just was something that only happens once a century. And I wish we were friends, and I wish I had gotten to know him, but I certainly know him from his playing. And that's about all I could say. So this is not a typical interview for me where everybody's talking about David Bowie and my collaborations, which are wonderful. But this gentleman named Glenn Gould, he's just like one of a kind, and most of our composers that we love are dead. So I'm living as a composer now, and it's just warms my heart to understand the depth of his music, and having written also, which we'll do later, a homage for Glenn.
Yes. But Mike, as a musician, what are the commonalities between the classical music and the rock and pop music from your vision? What do you think about this?
You know, having played with so many rock musicians, the rock musicians, a lot of the songs and compositions were coming from the harmonies of Rachmaninoff, from Bach, from Chopin. They're more so than the jazz musicians. It's a whole other art form, and it's a magnificent art form. But in the rock musicians, including the Beatles, including David Bowie, a lot of their inspiration came from the classical musicians, you know, Chopin and Mozart and Bach, because the chord progressions are so beautiful. And to this day, I'm inspired by the harmonies of Beethoven's Hammerklavier, or Goldberg variations, or Chopin preludes, or Liszt. You know, it's endless. You know, I heard you play The Consolation. You know, what a beautiful, beautiful piece.
I love those pieces. And also, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I know you're an amazing classical music composer. And would you like to tell me more about your career as a composer for classical pieces for piano?
I've been composing classical music for over 50 years, but it's sort of nobody cares. It's kind of like,
No,
I mean,
but even you know that Glenn Gould, as composer, was also very underestimated in his life. You know that,
very.
and his composition were amazing. And I also know you have a beautiful surprise for celebrating Glenn Gould's birthday, who today turns 88, and with a very beautiful composition for the occasion, Mike.
Well, Leonard Bernstein also was a very good composer and not fully understood in his lifetime. And so was Rachmaninoff, you know? And
Exactly.
yes, so I hope I don't have to wait 100 years to be understood, because it's nice to be alive and see see the results. But I'm patient, and the piece that I actually wrote for Glenn Gould was inspired by his performance from the Goldberg Variations, and I wrote it 15 years ago. So to date, I've written thousands of pieces of music. It's what I do, except when I'm touring, you know, and I'm not touring now, so I'm able to write even more. But the love of composition is very deep for me. I was studying when I was 12 years old with a classical Juilliard teacher, and he was teaching me Mozart Sonata in A major, Kerschel 331, you know. And I came in the following week and I changed some of the notes, and instead of the teacher saying, maybe you're an aspiring composer, he said to me, you have delusions of grandeur. And that wasn't a very big compliment, and it threw me off a little bit, but he should have realized that my desire to create my own music was very deep from as early as 12 years old.
That's beautiful and inspiring, because your story is really inspiring. And as I said, you composed this beautiful piece, and I'd be glad, and also our audience, to listen carefully your dedication to Glenn Gould. And thank you very much for this beautiful piece that embodies for sure the essence of Mr. Gould. Thank you, Mike. You capture the inner soul of Mr. Gould. As we said at the beginning, this is a COVID edition, and Glenn Gould loved isolation. And during this terrible period, we faced isolations. What's your relationship with loneliness?
I missed the end of the words. What's
your relationship with loneliness, I think?
the relationship with loneliness?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. You know, you have 5 hours? It would take me 5 hours to explain it. You know, every artist lives in their own world. It's like its own universe. And even though I'm blessed, beyond blessed to have family and beautiful wife for 52 years and 2 daughters and 7 grandchildren, it's when I'm up in the studio composing, you're by yourself. It's kind of in the same way that you're born alone and you die alone, even though you might have the most loved people all around you. And you need to be in your own world to create your inner voice. The question is, I have a more balanced life than Glenn Gould because I have a wife that's there for me through thick and thin. And when you're only by yourself, you could go crazy because your mind could really do some tricks on you. So I know there's a point you have to be careful, and it could get dangerous when you cross the line and you end up, you know, in a mental house.
It's
you know,
true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but also Glenn was known for his eccentricities as the chair, scarves, gloves, and of course also isolation, and I have no relationship with women except 2 or you know, kind of. But what's your eccentricities, if you have one, and who is the most eccentric artist in a good way you work with?
Yeah, you know, I tried for several months sitting very low on the piano stool when I saw that Glenn did it and I understood for the technique. And I did it for many months, you know, and I did improve my tone. At a certain point, I realized playing in the rock world, sometimes I'm standing, sometimes it's an electric piano, sometimes it's a synthesizer. Today, I'm blessed to have my 9-foot concert grand. So I had to overcome that very specific level, sitting so low, and it wasn't working for me, but I did try it out. In terms of eccentric musicians, I mean, Keith Jarrett is a marvelous improvising pianist, and he's kind of eccentric. Sometimes I would go see him in a concert, and I could see his similarities to Glenn Gould also. And sometimes he wouldn't start playing for 2 minutes, and if he heard the audience had a coughing, he would go crazy and stop playing. I know Glenn Gould stopped performing and only worked in the studio. For me, I love to perform, and I love my playing changes based on who is listening. If it's a classical audience, if it's you alone, if it's me playing for myself, if I'm playing for a jazz audience, if I'm playing for a rock audience, because I'm improvising, so the notes find me, and I find the notes, and the audience helps me find them, and the energy, the collective energy of who's in the audience helps to find me. And that's the miracle of music, and that's the miracle of the communication. So I understand why he'd want to be in the studio. I love being in the studio, making the music perfect, and he used to cut the tapes and so many tracks and overdubs. It's imperative as an artist they do that, but it's also very important to go out and reach people and touch their heart, because there is nothing like a live performance, at least from my opinion. But I could understand why you could go crazy traveling on the road and you're in hotels and it's lonely and the sound is terrible and this piano's out of tune. I've experienced all of that in the 5,000-6,000 concerts I have played. But, you know, it's still your job. It's your duty to go out and bring that love and the passion that you have for the music to people, you know. So it's a balance of the two. It's a balance.
It's a balance, absolutely. But during this, you know, upside down world time we're living in, and we are also experienced quarantine, we have more time to watch film, movies on Netflix or on Amazon. And I was lucky enough to find Mike Garson and his 88 friends, where I can look at you in a different perspective, because you're so passionate with your pupils during your master classes, and I can see you, you know, in a very new dress. And would you like to tell us more about this project and about your master classes for young students?
I've always been teaching since 1963. I've had over 12,000 private piano students go through my different homes, whether I was living in New York or England or Los Angeles. And I love teaching, and I do Zoom lessons now, and I adore teaching, and it's very important for an artist to pay it forward, especially when you get older. So, I love teaching. And I love working with young children and teenagers and people in their 20s. I've given master classes all around the world. I like to share whatever I know, because there are a lot of misunderstandings in music and regarding performance and regarding the music business and regarding how you have a balanced life. And I'm a person, thank God, that never used any drugs, so I'm able to be healthy and still perform at my age. And I've been doing this, you know, my whole life. I've been playing professionally for 60 years and nonstop. And I feel in some ways that I'm just beginning and just warming up, because I supported so many artists, especially David Bowie for so many years, but many jazz artists, Freddie Hubbard, Stan Getz, Mike Brecker, Dave Liebman, Elvin Jones, it goes on and on. And it's sort of my time now. I was very patient, you know, and now I have an opportunity to express myself and share it and teach it. So if I am teaching a certain amount, not too much, maybe 5 students a week, and if I'm composing every few days, and if I'm performing a little bit and recording in the studio, I have a nice balance. And of course, the rest of the time with my family, you know. So
yes.
it's like it's juggling. It's like juggling.
And yes,
spiritual juggling.
This is beautiful to have a great balance between your, you know, work and private life, as I think Gould care very much about. And I was wonder, and I'm curious to know if you have a particular records or a piece played by Glenn Gould that you like most.
Oh, I love listening to Goldberg variations. I was listening this morning. Sometimes I like listening to Mozart Requiem, you know, sometimes I like listening to Rubinstein play Chopin Nocturnes, but many times I'd rather go to the piano and compose and play than listen, especially if I'm depressed. I'm better off playing and composing. That's much healthier for me than just listening.
I'm very happy that you participated in the 4th edition of Happy Birthday, Mr. Gould. At the end of the interview, we say an happy birthday to Mr. Gould together, or a wish would you like to say to our audience today?
Well, you know, I would like to say happy birthday, but I should play happy birthday, right? Or do that afterwards? You want me to play a little happy birthday?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for this wonderful interview, and see you soon. And we'll follow you on your website and your social media. I see you're very active around Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you very much again. And the line go back to Alida, who is in Fazioli.
Thank you.
Thank you for following this live streaming in honor of Glenn Gould for celebrating his birthday. I would love to thank the Glenn Gould Foundation, Mr. Brian Levine, Peter O'Brien, and all the staff. A big thanks to Fazioli and Fazioli Showroom in Milano. A big thanks to all the participants, and thanks to the Canadian Embassy, to Nurse Alexandra Bugailiskis, and thank you so much for all the artists, Mike Garson, Rachel Kudo, the author and journalist Katie Hafner. Thanks to Alberto Collini for filming and editing. And thank you guys. See you for the next edition next year. And see you soon.